Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to another episode of The Standard is the Standard. I am Jeff Hartman, editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. Here with you, as always, is my co-host, Lance Williams. Lance, how are you this evening?
I'm doing fantastic, Jeff. How's it down your way?
It's been a long off week. The bye week typically is long, but it seems like this has been it seems like forever since the Pittsburgh Steelers played, and the last time they stepped on the field, it was week 6, and they beat the Cincinnati Bengals. We've talked about that game to death. There's really no need to talk about that anymore. Let's talk about right off the bat. Let's talk about some rumors that are flying around. For those of you out there that are listening or watching, thinking that the Steelers were going to try to trade for Patrick Peterson, that's something Lance said that he wished they would do. He said sell the farm, essentially, to get this guy. Well, Patrick Peterson comes out today, and he announced, this is Wednesday, in case you're listening on Thursday, and he says, I'm a Cardinal for life. This organization has treated me well, and I'm sticking with them. So he's not available. I don't even think they would trade him no matter what. Okay, so that's the big name guy, and he's out. Let's say he's out of the picture. The October 30th deadline is quickly approaching, Lance. If you're the Steelers, if you're looking at positions to possibly trade for someone, we know cornerback is going to be on the top of everyone's list. What other positions might you be looking for in terms of trades? And what would you give up, I guess, is the question. Let's talk about positions first. What positions would you be targeting?
Defensively, you've got to think about inside linebacker. You've got to think about corner. But I think you also have to think about defensive linemen. You have to add if you could add another defensive lineman, the caliber of Tyson Alualu into that rotation, that might not be bad as well.
So what about outside linebacker? I mean, this is something we talked about as well when we had someone that was watching live. And by the way, on YouTube, if you are watching live, you can go into our live chat and ask questions. We'll get to those towards the end of the show. Someone asked about Ola Adenye, who is capable of coming off of the injured reserve list soon. They're only carrying 3 outside linebackers, and let's be honest, it's really only 2. Anthony Chiquillo does not bring much, if anything, as a pass rusher. He's more of a special teams guy. Would that be a position that you would target, or are you just okay with what they have?
No, given the depth, given those numbers, yes, you might target that as well. Because if either one of those guys go down, Dud Dupree or Mr. Watt, I'm not even going to go with the initials. Mr. Watt, if he goes down, you're in trouble. You're in some deep trouble. Because given the scheme shift of how the defensive linemen are more two-gapping now, and the pressure is more dependent on the outside linebackers, you definitely need some depth. But I would imagine if either one of those guys went down, they might go back to a one-gap scheme and kind of switch it back to what they were doing to try to compensate for a lack of pressure if one of those guys went down. But that would be tough if either one of those guys went down.
Yeah, I don't think anyone with a logical brain and a logical head on their shoulders would disagree with any of the positions you just named. What about on offense, though? If it was a position, because I have a few positions in my head that I would possibly look for, is there anything that you would look for on offense in terms of trades, or would you just think, you know what, they're pretty good as it is, don't mess up a good thing?
Wide receiver, they could look for a veteran slot wide receiver, a third wide receiver, somebody that might have had some experience with Todd Haley that could pick up possibly the language of the offense or pick up the scheme behind some of the route combinations, what they try to do from the slot. A veteran third wide receiver, not being so 12 personnel, too tight end dependent with a Vance McDonald who does get hurt. But I think they would like to get some more production from a third wide receiver. Because right now, with Eli Rogers on the PUP list, and right now they're not getting a lot from James Washington, although I think he's coming along nicely, a third wide receiver could mix in well with that group.
I would also say offensive tackle. And you have some of these teams that you see the New York Giants doing it. The Oakland Raiders have been doing it seemingly since they traded Khalil Mack. They're kind of just folding. They're saying rebuilding here. If you could get I'm not saying a starting left tackle. I'm not saying any of the players that they would trade for would be players that you would start immediately. I'm talking depth because Marcus Gilbert, just like you mentioned with injury issues and things of that nature, he is another player that rarely ever plays all 16 games. And I'm not sure if Chuck Okorafor or Matt Filer are guys that you would want to throw out there in a really meaningful game, maybe in the second half of the season. Think about some of the games they have to play against the Chargers, against the Saints, against the Ravens, against the Patriots, against the Bengals. They have tough games down the stretch. And if Marcus Gilbert goes down or if Al Villanueva goes down, you don't really have that presence. So if I can find an offensive tackle that's kind of a second tier guy that you might be able to pick up for, let's say, a fifth, sixth round pick, I'm pulling the trigger on that. That's probably the only other position. I agree with you on the third wide receiver. You agree on that offensive tackle depth?
Yeah, I think to put a name to what you're saying, I think you're talking about a Chris Hubbard type.
Yeah, absolutely.
A
Absolutely.
Chris Hubbard type. But let me ask you this, Jeff. Doesn't Okorafor sound like a science experiment? Like it sounds like a chemical reaction, like chlorophyll, Okorafor. When you
Okay.
mix these two elements, it becomes Okorafor.
Now, kids, what you're going to see here is the chlorophyll start to form on the outside of this
Yes, exactly.
petri dish. So, yeah.
Okorafor, or it's a brand of medicine or something. Like 2 scoops of Okorafor, and you'll feel better in the morning.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, we either have science experiments or law firms. It seems like what was it? Matakevich and Bostic. You said sounded or Matakevich and Williams. You said sounded
Yes,
like a law firm.
yes, yes.
In
Of missed
Pittsburgh, you'd have to have
tackles.
a third one. Matakevich, and Williams. I think it would
Yes,
be.
they would miss tackles like they would mess up your case. So
Hey, they
you
don't they don't they don't make money unless you win money. That's their slogan. So, anyways, um,
exactly.
speaking of injury-prone players and things of that nature, shockingly, I guess I shouldn't say shockingly, the Pittsburgh Steelers are a rather healthy team moving into Week 8 against the Cleveland Browns. This is round 2. Everyone remembers Week 1, the tie. It was awful on all parts. Um, they're starting to get everyone healthy. Whether Morgan Burnett will be back this week, I'm not sure. LJ Ford has practiced. The official Wednesday report is out. I have not seen that official list yet. I apologize. Was busy after work today. I will check that out hopefully by the end of the show. But the Steelers, according to Mike Tomlin in his Tuesday press conference, were very much a healthy football team. And so when you have guys like Ben Roethlisberger in his media session today saying it's week 8 and he feels so much better. Now, this is a guy that finally decided to lay off the donuts. It took him 14 years, but he finally figured out that, wow, if I took care of my body, it might actually help. He lost some weight, and now all of a sudden he's reaping the benefits. He said that his knees are not swollen. He's not having to ice them down as much, that he feels really, really good. It's a really good sign for the Steelers. And then they could be getting healthy in terms of Eli Rogers coming back if they choose to activate him off the PUP list. We mentioned Ola Adeniyi as an option at outside linebacker who's on injured reserve currently. They're getting some of these players back. Lance, I just want to get your quick take before we go to true or false about this upcoming game. Health aside, what are your thoughts? How is this game going to be different outside of venue than week 1 for both of these teams?
I think the big thing you'd have to point to is Baker Mayfield. I mean, that's the biggest difference. And you have some other players on that Cleveland Browns offense that are no longer there. No Hyde, no Gordon, no Taylor. Oh my! But it's Baker Mayfield. That offense is much different with Baker Mayfield. That it legitimately has a passing offense that can actually move the ball down the field and beat you in the National Football League. It's a professional passing offense now. Although Baker Mayfield's a rookie with Tyrod Taylor, I mean, you had to defend his scrambling essentially. Tyrod Taylor would not put the ball in tight spaces, would not risk anything, and Tyrod, he's an average player. Tyrod Taylor's an average player, so Baker Mayfield is the biggest difference with this football team.
I have not been. I'll admit I have not watched a ton of tape of Baker Mayfield, but I have watched several games. Man, I honestly, I'm not that impressed. Are you?
I'm quite impressed with Baker. I mean, I like what he's doing. I like his calmness in the pocket, his pocket mobility. He's actually a multiple read quarterback this early in his career, which I think is impressive. He actually scans the field. And he throws a good ball. He throws particularly a really good seam ball. There's some action on the ball. It's alive. It's a crisp ball. I like Baker Mayfield. I think Baker's a player. I think I think Cleveland found a guy that they can build around. I think he's solid.
Okay. Personally, I just think I don't know. I'm not sold on him yet.
He's short,
Still, he is
which
short.
stands out, which you do see at times on film that he is short, and that has some issues in terms of some of the stuff that he's trying to do and throwing in the pocket. His height, I've seen a little bit of an issue there, but I think of the rookie guys that have come in, Darnold, Lamar Jackson, what's the big kid in Buffalo? Is that Josh Allen?
Yeah.
He's better than all those guys. I even think he's a little bit better than Rosen. I like Rosen as well. So I think Baker Mayfield, of those quarterbacks that were drafted in the first round, I think he's clearly the best one of those guys.
Well, yeah. I'm not sure that's saying much, but well, whatever. We'll talk about it. Let's go ahead and get into true or false. For those that might be the first time listeners, what we do here is we basically make a statement and then we debate whether it's true or whether it's false. Now we're going to start off talking strictly about the upcoming game with the Cleveland Browns, and then we'll eventually move into maybe some NFL type themed statements. So let's start off right away. Lance, James Conner will rush for over 100 yards in Week 8 against the Cleveland Browns. True or false?
False. And the reason I say false is the one thing that National Football League teams do, if they can do it, is if a guy gets 100 yards against you and runs the ball pretty well, they try to get that corrected first. I think Conner will run the ball effectively. I just don't think he'll run for 100. I think he'll run for 85 to 90 in that era, in that range, with a yards per carry around 4.2, somewhere around that. I think it's more so if he can average about 4.2 to 4.5 per carry, I think that will accomplish what the Steelers want to do, running the football. But I think they take away that because, you don't want to give up 100-yard rushers to the same guy in multiple times, especially in multiple divisional games. That's saying something. If you can run, one guy can run for over 100 against a divisional opponent multiple times in the season. I think they'll try to take that away first.
Okay, let me ask you this. Over under total scrimmage yards by James Conner, we'll set the line at 125.
Over.
Over. But he's
So
only gonna rush for 80, so you think he's gonna be a big time player in the passing game.
I think he'll get some in the passing game. That's where I think he'll make his hay in the
Okay.
passing game. So I think his touches will be up around 20 to 25 touches.
Okay. I agree with the touches. I agree with the over. I say true. I think he does get over 100. I feel like this Steelers offense. Now, I have a question for you later in the show about the bye week. I feel like entering the bye week, they were clicking on all cylinders along that offensive front, and they could do what they wanted. And I know the Cleveland defense is no joke anymore, but I feel like it didn't matter. The Cincinnati Bengals off defense was no joke either, and the Steelers pushed them around. I mean, if you go back and watch the film of that week 6 game, my goodness, was the Bengals were manhandled by the Steelers offensive line. And so what I'm saying is that I think personally that Le'Veon Bell, good Lord, that James Conner will go for over 100, and I think he's going to look at 140 for total scrimmage yards. Didn't he have close to 140 in week 1? I can't remember off the top of my head. I know it was close. But
I'm thinking it was I think it was north of that. Listeners, let us know. I think it was north of that. I'm thinking closer to 170-ish.
okay.
I know it's a really good game because I think he almost had 120 yards rushing.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Yeah, I think you're right. So, okay, so you think false, but you see him having a good game. I say true. I also see him having a good game as well. All right. The Steelers will sack Baker Mayfield or whoever is quarterbacking the Browns at that time at least 5 times. True or false?
I'm going to go true. I think the tackles, Hubbard and I don't know the other kid's name. I think the tackles of the Browns aren't very good. In that first game, the Steelers got 7 sacks. I mean, the one thing that stands out when you look at the Cleveland Browns, they've given up 31 sacks this year, which is ranked last in the National Football League. Now, of those, 13 of those are attributed to when Tyrod Taylor was starting. But Baker Mayfield himself has been sacked 18 times, which would be ranked 14th worst in the National Football League. So it's a case of no matter who's back there, guys get sacked. And you're talking about two very mobile guys. I mean, that's one of the strengths of Baker Mayfield. Secondary plays, late in the down plays, being able to move outside of the pocket and make plays. And we all know Tyrod Taylor is a great runner. They're not good in pass pro. And I think TJ Watt, and that's one of the key matchups in this game for me, is the matchup between Dud Dupree and TJ Watt against the Cleveland Brown tackles. They have to win that matchup. I think they will win that matchup, and I think they will have 5 or more sacks. So I think it's true.
Okay, just randomly tell us how many you think they have total.
I think they get 6 to 7 again.
Okay.
But it may not be the same way because I think TJ Watt in that game had, what, 5?
No, he had 4, and it got
4.
taken back to 3.5 because they gave half to a Hargrave on a sack. So
yeah, I think they'll get some blitz stuff because Baker Mayfield, the Ravens did a really good job of blitzing Baker Mayfield. I think Baker has some issues with the blitz, and I think that's a way you can break down their pass protection as well, that he doesn't see it and recognize it quickly. And I think the blocking breaks down in the blitz, 2 things which are bad things if you're trying to get good blitz pro. So pass pro. So I think the Steelers will get 6 to 7 sacks again.
I agree with you on all fronts. I think it's true. I think they will get the sacks. It might not be early in the game. I think that the Browns are going to come out and really try to run the football, and they're going to try to keep that pass rush off of them and not expose Baker Mayfield. And then eventually, because of the offense of the Steelers, I think they're going to have to throw the ball to get back in it. And that's when they can kind of tee off and get to Mayfield. So we both agree on that one. And I also agree. I was going to say 6 sacks. You said 6 or 7. I can see both. I don't think it's going to go to 8 or anything like that. But then again, when they do have big, huge outputs, it's typically in the sack department, it's typically against the Cleveland Browns. All right, next one. The Steelers will give up 4 sacks. That's the amount that they gave up in that first matchup in week 1. Let me remind all the listeners out there, the Steelers' offensive line in the last 2 games, that's against the Bengals and the Falcons, have not given up a sack and only 1 quarterback hit in those 2 contests. So, Lance, true or false, the Steelers will give up 4 sacks on Sunday at Heinz Field?
False. And in fact, Jeff, I think the Steelers have only given up 8 or 9 sacks this year, which I think is second in the National Football League, and almost half of those came to Cleveland in the first game. I think they'll have a better plan in dealing with Myles Garrett, and I think they'll clean that up. And I think the Steelers at most give up 2 sacks in this game.
Yeah, and Ben Roethlisberger, again, if you haven't listened to his interview from today on Wednesday, it's worth listening to. He was asked about playing a team that is young as Cleveland. You know, does playing them the second time a bigger difference than playing them obviously the first time? He said, absolutely. He said, you get a chance to really get a feel for what the guys like to do. And so Myles Garrett, who basically missed both of the games against Pittsburgh last year, if you don't want to count the throwaway game in week 17, for someone like Villanueva has never gone against him. And so there's some familiarity now. They know what to expect. Not that they're not going to have wrinkles on the other side. I think that they are going to give up some pressure, but I'm going to say they only give up 1 sack in the game. So false. I say false. They don't give up 4. I do think they give up 1, kind of breaks their streak, but I think ultimately they have another really good game. So here we go. True or false, the Steelers will win the turnover battle in the game on Sunday because the Cleveland Browns take the football away surprisingly well. So what do you think, Lance? True or false?
I'm going to say true. I think the Steelers will be, I would guess, +2 in the game. I think the Steelers will, with all of the pressure that I think they're going to get, I think they'll get a fumble recovery and an interception. Baker will put the ball in some areas where he doesn't want and give you an opportunity to catch the football. So I think the Steelers will be +2 in a turnover margin. So I'm thinking the Steelers get 2 turnovers. Browns get no turnovers. I think the Steelers are going to come out and play a really good, clean football game, considering the amount of turnovers that they had in the first game. I think with the way they're playing now, by running the football and really trying to ball control it a little bit more and trying to mix that in, I think they'll do a good job in terms of turnovers and really secure the football in this matchup.
Okay, I'm going to say false. I think that this is a no blood scenario between both teams. I think they both might give it away once, and that's it. I think it's going to be a cleaner game than you saw in week one. I just don't think Pittsburgh's defense, I mean, yeah, they might get a couple forced fumbles or something like that, but they're just not a defense that takes the ball away very well. You look at week 6 where Joe Hayden had 2 opportunities to seal the game with interceptions and didn't come down with it. That just seems to be the trend of this defense. That can change, and the beat of an eye, but at the same time, I haven't seen it yet, so I'm going to say false. All right, let's go to some more general true or false questions. We're going to go with one that's obviously based around the Steelers. True or false, the Pittsburgh Steelers will make a trade of some kind before the October 30th trade deadline. True or false, Lance?
Now, I know I talked a ton about Patrick Peterson. He's since come out and said he's a dedicated Cardinal. Jeff talked a little bit about it at the top of the program. When players say that, it doesn't mean anything. Show me the money and they're gone the next day. That doesn't mean the Steelers are actually going to make the trade for them. I'm going to say false. And you know why I'm going to say false? The Steelers will not make a trade because we all want them to make a trade. It all makes sense that they would make a trade. Every Steeler fan in Steeler Nation worth their grain of salt knows they need to make a trade to improve this defense. They need to make it now. They need to make it yesterday. They needed to make it last week. Why do they need to do that? Because the quarterback is old. Ben is on it. This is the end. He's at the dessert course. And you're not going to find a quarterback the caliber of Ben Roethlisberger quite some time unless you get lucky like the Green Bay Packers or the San Francisco 49ers with Steve Young and Aaron Rodgers. So while you have your guy, your second best quarterback in your franchise history, you better go all in. And sometimes it requires that, and you may have to be less conservative than you typically are. But with all that said, we know they ain't making a trade. We know they ain't making a trade. We're just going to frustrate ourselves. You know it ain't happening. So no, false. They will not make a trade.
I agree. False. I think the Steelers, they might have had their eye on a couple players, possibly. Might have put in some phone calls, but it's risk reward at this point, and I think the Steelers like the team that they have. Yeah, there might be some upgrades out there, but ultimately, I don't think that's going to be the way that they want to go. So we both agree that false. They are not going to make a trade. Now, here's an NFL question that you posed, Lance. I think it's a really good one. I should say a statement. True or false, Adam Thielen, the receiver from the Minnesota Vikings, is the best wide receiver in the National Football League right now. What do you say?
True. I think it's 100% true. I think, over the last 5 years, I think it's been Antonio Brown, but Thielen is hot. I mean, boy is balling. I can't front. The boy is putting up 100-yard games every week against everybody. The boy is balling. I love AB. I like Julio Jones. I like Keenan Allen. There's a lot of guys that I like. But, it's a what have you done for me lately league. And arguably, Juju is playing better than AB this year. So the question might be, is AB still even the best wide receiver on the Steelers? Last year he was. Is he better than Juju this year? So I think Adam Thielen right now is absolutely the best wide receiver in NFL, best route runner. He just kills people. He kills guys. And because he's a white guy, He just absolutely frustrates corners. Corners can't take it. They're just like, how's this white guy roasted me? It's not supposed to happen. They're like, wait a minute. I thought white guys couldn't jump or run or catch. And Thielen is like, you thought wrong. I can do all three. Touchdown, 115 on your head. I mean, he's on a pace. His pace is ridiculous. I think he's on a pace to break the single season yardage record because he's doing something that's never been done. Nobody started the season this hot. I mean, he's absolutely the best wide receiver. He is killing the game right now. And guys just can't take it. They sour and sore. Did you see the quarterback from Philadelphia? I forget the cornerback's name for Philadelphia that he was absolutely killing on the road. This boy was about to just pull his hair out. He couldn't take it. He was like, wait a minute. I'm not going to be able to go home. He killing me like that? Thielen is the man. Absolutely the best wide receiver in football this year. No doubt.
Okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to change into Mercury Morris. And if you don't know who Mercury Morris is, he's a former running back of the Miami Dolphins on that famed 1972 undefeated team. And he's the one that's always on SportsCenter whenever a team gets to 8-0, 9-0, 10-0. And he always says the same thing. Don't call me when you're in my city. Don't call me when you're on my block. Call me when you're on my front porch. You know, in other words, don't talk to me until you're close to actually going undefeated. Adam Thielen has played tremendous football so far this season. And he's had a great year last year. But there is no chance in hell that I am saying he is better than Antonio Brown because he is producing right now, but Antonio Brown is still the best wide receiver in the National Football League. And there's a big difference. If you look at just results, and even Antonio Brown, he's still having a decent year, even though it's been very, very slow for him at the early portions of the year. Adam Thielen's great. But if I'm looking at a complete body of work, there's no way in hell that I'm putting him over Antonio Brown. I don't even think I'm putting him over Julio Jones. I just think that right now, Thielen's getting a lot of good opportunities. He can thank Stephon Diggs as well for being opposite him, is giving him a lot of one-on-ones. That's probably not going to happen too much. But I see what you're saying. But Mercury Morris, hey, don't call me when you're in my neighborhood. If he finishes the year this well, we're only going into week 8. All right, if he finishes the year strong, then we'll revisit this discussion. But as of right now, it's AB until someone unseats AB.
That's 7 straight 100-yard games, I believe. That's ridiculous. 7 straight. And he's seeing double coverage. He's not working against third corners. I mean, I feel you with body of work. I mean, that's absolutely true. The body of work is not there. But this year, the boy is killing. The boy is killing. You better have a Thielen plan. That's for sure.
All right. No, like I said, I'm not saying he's not good. He's tremendous. And he finally has a good quarterback. Well, a better quarterback. So we'll see how things pan out there for the Minnesota Vikings. But that's it for our true or false today. Now we get into our game picks. I kind of wanted to expand this a little bit, Lance, and not just pick the Steelers game. I also wanted to pick the other AFC North matchups for the week, if you would be willing to do that. First and foremost, an AFC North matchup. Obviously, we have Pittsburgh versus Cleveland, but we'll go around the division to see who else is playing. Let me pull up the schedule quickly, if my computer will work with me. Here we go. The Baltimore Ravens go and play the Carolina Panthers. That's going to be a tough one. What do you think about that game?
Baltimore's going on the road.
Let me double check the schedule for this week. And yes, they are at the Carolina Panthers. That is a 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time kickoff.
No brainer. Carolina wins that game. It'll be a physical matchup. But Flacco stinks on the road. He absolutely stinks on the road. I mean, Flacco is worse than Ben on the road. So, and that's bad. So they stink on the road. It'll be a defensive slugfest, though. Baltimore is a very good defense. In fact, Baltimore is the best defense I've seen this year, simply because they have really good players. They have a really good scheme. And the one thing Baltimore does better than anybody in the National Football League on defense is tackle. They do a really good job of limiting yards after the catch. and they'll turn over Cam here or there. But Flacco's so bad on the road, and I don't like that offense. I like Carolina to win that game.
Yeah, see, I don't know because for me, the Baltimore Ravens are a good football team, and they're a team that honestly they're resilient. They're a resilient group. I think I could see this team actually coming off of that heartbreaking loss to the Saints, coming to going down the win. I'm going to take Baltimore on the road. I think defense travels well. Cam Newton basically slept walk through 3 quarters against Philadelphia. Um, they did come back. They did come back and win. So kudos to them. And I had him as my FanDuel quarterback, so that was big props to me. I won. Um, but still, I got to go and say that I think the Ravens are going to win. I think the Ravens are just a good team. I think they're going to go down there. They're going to win. It's a game that they really have to win before they play the Steelers in Week 9. So let's go to the other AFC North game, the Cincinnati Bengals at home versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, another 1 p.m. kickoff. What do you think there, Lance?
I think the Bengals will win that game. I think they'll bounce back. Defensive line will play dominant, really get after Jameis Winston. He'll put some balls into some bad spots, give them opportunities to make some turnovers. And I think that they will win that game. Tampa's not a very good defense, not a very good team, very good offense, but I think the Bengals will win that game.
I agree. I think the Cincinnati Bengals are coming off of a really tough loss at Pittsburgh, and then another embarrassing loss to Kansas City on Sunday Night Football. I think they bounce back. I think they win. And so as of right now, that would make, if your predictions are correct, Cincinnati would improve to 5-3. The Baltimore Ravens would drop to 4-4. And so now we go into Pittsburgh Steelers, Cleveland Browns. Lance, how do you see this game shaking out?
I think this game is really about getting pressure on a quarterback on Baker Mayfield, as well as, and I haven't been doing my rhyme this year, but let me give you my rhyme. I usually give you my Nipsey Russell rhyme. That's the theme of the game. And it's simply, if you want some love, stop Chubb. Chubb's been playing really good football, and you can see why they got rid of Carlos Hyde, averaging 7 yards per carry. But this is really about the sacks that Cleveland gives up. This is about getting pressure on Baker Mayfield and making it very uncomfortable. And it's about turnovers. The Steelers are the better football team. If they don't turn the football over, they'll beat Cleveland. Cleveland will have some opportunities to make some plays with Njoku. Jarvis Landry will make a play here or there. But I think if the Steelers tackle well, get pressure, and don't turn over the football, they win. I like the Steelers to beat Cleveland at home, keep the momentum going. I think they beat Cleveland to the tune of 31-17.
All right, very good. I agree that I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are a team that is turning the corner, offensively, defensively. If they can just start to mesh, I think that this team could be very, very tough to beat. And I also think they're a team that can beat any team in the AFC. That includes the Patriots, that includes the Ravens, that includes the Chargers. And it's just funny that they're going to face all three of those teams in the second half of their schedule. At the same time, I think the Cleveland Browns, man, and it's insane when you think about how they've played 4 overtime games already, and it's only going into week 8. There's only one team, I believe, in NFL history that has had more. It was a Philadelphia Eagles team from the 30s or something that they had played in 5 overtime games. I don't think this one's going to overtime. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers, although it might be close at first, in the second, third, they pull it together, start playing good football, and pull away. I think that the Steelers, I think they win. They're favored by 7 points for those gamblers out there that are interested. I think that the Steelers win 34. They go over the 30-point plateau, 34-20. I think that the Browns might get a late touchdown to kind of make it seem a little bit closer than it was. I think the Steelers dominate. I think they protect Ben Roethlisberger. And I think, like I said, they really start to find their groove. So, not good news for those that have been following our picks. When Lance and I both pick the Steelers, he normally puts his bad juju onto the team. So let's hope that doesn't hold true for this week.
Not last week. Let me point out a couple of things that I've seen
Sure.
with Baker. One thing is Baker's ability to extend plays off script. That's one thing that Steelers will have to be really cognizant of. They'll have to plaster wide receivers and do a good job there. Also with Baker, you're going to see some RPO stuff. They're going to have to be a little bit disciplined with that. The one thing you did see in that first ball game was they were able to run the ball, Cleveland, pretty well, attacking TJ Watt in the run game and the left side of that defensive formation, defensive line. They are definitely a right-handed football team in terms of the run. So if the Steelers can really plug that up, put this ball game into Baker Mayfield's hands, they'll have no problem. But again, I like Jeff's pick, and I like him 31-17. And by the way, Jeff, we both picked them to beat Cincinnati, the Bungles, and
Did you? I thought you
I
picked
did.
Cincinnati.
No, I think
Okay.
I got the score right. I think I picked 28-24, so I was pretty close to the
Well,
score.
that's not right. You got close. That's
I got
not picking the
close.
score.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
close.
This is only good in horseshoes and hand grenades, my friend. All right.
Absolutely.
Okay, so if you're listening or if you're watching the show live, you have questions, go ahead and fire away. We have some already. We're going to go through rapid fire, answering these questions, get you ready for a weekend that is hopefully going to be a really good weekend for the Steelers in terms of how things shake out in the AFC North. Okay, Emilio asked Lance, how do you think the Steelers finished with the NFC South teams? They're 2-0 right now. They beat the Falcons. They beat the Buccaneers. They'll play the Panthers in Week 10 on Thursday Night Football, and then the Saints down in New Orleans. I want to say that's Week 14. How do you think they finish against NFC South teams this year?
They will not beat the Saints in the Dome. And Carolina, is that game in Carolina or
It is in
Pittsburgh?
Heinz Field.
They will beat Carolina at home, but they won't beat the Saints on the turf inside in New Orleans. They won't do that. Drew
So,
Brees is going to eat them up.
you said 3-1.
Yes, yes.
I have to agree. I think 3-1 is a very realistic record for them against the NFC South. And to be fair, I think that would be a pretty good record. I mean, the NFC South, you have those two front runners in Carolina and New Orleans. The other two are kind of cellar dwellers. So we'll see how the Steelers play out there. Okay. Here's just a general NFL question. How long until the last undefeated team falls? He's talking about the Los Angeles Rams. How long do you see their undefeated streak going? They do play the Kansas City Chiefs coming up. Keep that in mind.
Where do they play the Chiefs? Do they play them in
In
LA or
Mexico.
oh, brother? Um, hell, let's say they go 15-1. I'll say they lose that game.
Okay.
But actually, no. I'm gonna just throw it out there. The Rams going undefeated.
You know who's going to beat the Rams, and I don't even know when they play them again. The Seattle Seahawks are going to beat the Rams because the Seattle Seahawks, even as bad as they are, sometimes they just find ways to win crazy games, and that would be a crazy game. It's a divisional game. Russell Wilson can make plays. That's what I'll say. They're not going undefeated. They will not go
Mark the
undefeated.
tape. Mark the tape. If Gurley and Goff, by the way, Goff is a fellow California Golden Bear.
Yeah,
Big up the Golden Bear football. You know how we do.
they
Get
suck.
beat by every team in the Pac-12 and disappoint Bear fans like we got beat by UCLA 37-7 at homecoming when they had no wins. As you could tell, it's frustrating being a Cal Bear fan. But Aaron Rodgers and Jared Goff, two California Golden Bears, Marshawn Lynch, to name a few, Deshaun Jackson, they're going undefeated. If those two, if Goff and Gurley stay healthy, they're going undefeated.
Mark the tape. They're not going undefeated. I don't. Okay. Here we go. Let's see. Um, Here's a good one. What can we expect in terms of improvement from the Steelers defense? So a lot of people are saying the defense is going to get better. I think the question is, how could we visually see improvement? Like, in what areas do you think this defense can still improve on?
I think Artie Burns will improve. I don't think he's going to play Pro Bowl caliber football, but I think he's going to play better than he has recently, which was not saying much. So I think they'll be better coverage wise. And I think they'll be better from a philosophical point where they will play a little more bend, not break, not bend and broke defense, where I think they will be able to choke off big plays, keep some stuff in front of them, and really play an effective bend not break defense and really limit the big plays, especially with Burnett coming back. I think they'll do better against tight ends in the slot with him being able to play dime linebacker. So I think they'll get better coverage wise. Philosophically, I think they'll be a little bit better, and I think they will actually be able to play bend not break defense.
Okay. I think that tackling certainly can improve. And that's something that you can definitely see that's tangible. If you're watching the games, you see hell earlier in the season, there were two forced fumbles that came after missed tackles. And so everyone's ecstatic that the Steelers caused a fumble and recovered it. When I'm sitting there thinking, well, hell, if they would have tackled him the first time, it probably wouldn't have happened. So you should, in my opinion, tackling should improve as the season goes on. Now, Snowman asked a question that I'll just go ahead and answer. What happens if Le'Veon Bell doesn't show up this year? First and foremost, the $14.5 million that he is owed gets rolled over into the Steelers salary cap for next year, which would not be a bad thing because the Steelers could use that salary cap next year to go out and get players or to, make moves, sign players, whatever the case may be. He does not need to play this season to hit free agency. That is a common misconception. He is a vested veteran in the National Football League. He doesn't have to play one snap this season to be a free agent next season. Now, the Steelers do have options with a transition tag and all that stuff. You're getting into the nitty gritty of the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, and that's not what anyone wants to hear. So if Le'Veon Bell doesn't show up this year, he could still go elsewhere next year. If the Steelers slap a transition tag on him, that essentially means that they have the right to first refusal and things like that. Lance, am I missing anything in this scenario?
No, that's it. I mean, that's essentially it. That means he could be traded. They won't franchise him again. But the transition tag makes sense. They've said that that's probably what they're going to do, which allows him to be traded.
Yeah. So, and they would still get compensation in terms of a compensatory pick if that were to happen. So, next we have a Mateo asks, what do you think the odds are the Steelers landing? And this is a report that came from Jason Lockenfora of CBS Sports, Conley from the Raiders or Jenkins from the Giants.
I don't want Jenkins. I'd rather have the young player and develop him. But you got to realize with the young player, he might not be the answer this year. He may be the answer in the future. And that could be a good thing, particularly if you coach up, if you're able to get Artie Burns good, then you have two good young corners along with Joe Hayden. So I would rather, if that were to happen, that the Steelers get the young player from Ohio State, from the Raiders.
I don't know. Even Conley, he hasn't played well in the National Football League. And I understand that a change of scenery can help a lot of players, but ultimately, in my opinion, if I'm Kevin Colbert and or Mike Tomlin and I'm looking at the situation, I'm looking at players that could be potentially on the trading block, I'm asking myself one thing, are they an upgrade over what we already have? And if they are not, I am not pulling the trigger on any trade. I'm not giving away draft picks because why would I do that? Why would I go out there and make a trade, give up a draft pick or a potential player if this guy isn't going to be any better than what we already have? So unless it's better than Cameron Sutton, Artie Burns, and Cody Sensabaugh, don't make the trade. And honestly, Conley has not proven that as a National Football League player. He has potential. I can't say that I am confident in the Steelers' ability to develop cornerbacks and safeties. Maybe it's different with the new coach and not the old regime. We'll see, but I don't think they make a move on either of those players.
Well, you know what, Jeff? A lot of it's going to be based on their scout of him. If they were to pull that trigger, it'd be based on their scout of him, what they thought he was coming out.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. Reed Overand, it says, and Jenkins is set to make over $14 million next year. So there's no way the Steelers they're not going to jump in bed with that contract, if you know what I mean. So here we go. Let's give another one. How did the Steelers become more efficient in the red zone? This could be both offense and defense. Lance, go ahead and give us both. How do you think the Steelers could become more efficient in the red area?
Offensively, it's by running the football. It's by being a very good running football team in the red zone. I mean, not calling 3 consecutive pass plays in the red zone. Really being diverse in the red zone. I think on the opposite side of football, it's about getting pass rush. It's about getting pass rush in the red zone and really choking off the run. I mean, if you could speed it up in the red zone, you do well. So I think it's winning up front on both sides of the ball in the red zone. be able to run it, be able to stop the run, and I think you play better in the red zone.
Yeah, I think defensively, pressure is important, but I think they also need to mix up their coverage schemes in the red zone. Sometimes, you see like Artie Burns, it happened with him, it happened with Bud Dupree as well. They run some of these zone schemes, and the players, because the field's so short, I don't know what it is. Maybe they're just not that intelligent. I'm not sure. But whatever the case may be, it just doesn't always seem to work. So maybe mix up some of those in the back end, mix up some of their schemes that they're doing. Here we go. The question is, once Bell returns, assuming he returns, what's the likelihood the Steelers will use a 2-week exemption, the roster exemption, with no pay? Does this help in acquiring Patrick Peterson? Well, we talked about that earlier. I don't think Patrick Peterson is an option anymore. The Steelers, I just saw a report come across the wire from Dale Lawley of DKPittsburghSports.com stating that the Steelers have said they will pay Le'Veon Bell during that roster exemption. And when they get the roster exemption, they can put him in the lineup whenever they want. It just gives them 2 weeks to have to make a roster move to find space for him. So they will pay him, but he has to show up. So $855,000 every week. He's already lost over $7 million of a potential $14.5 million this year. So understand that's they said they'll pay him. He still has to show up. So there you go. Lance,
I saw a weird stat that at this point, excluding signing bonuses, that the compensation that he's lost is more than any running back would get paid this year. I don't know if that was true, but man, if that's the case, that's something. I mean, I don't have any more words for Le'Veon Bell. I mean, I'm sorry, listeners. I can't talk about Le'Veon Bell, a.k.a. Mr. Brown Gravy. I can't do it. I can't do it. I just can't do it. Either come in, play ball, or don't. I think even if you were the staunchest LB fan, that at this point you're sick of it. Just ball or not. It's okay if you don't want to play, sit out the whole season. Just do it. I mean, do you? Just be honest about what you're going to do, man. Either you're going to come or you're not. It is what it is.
Agree, 100%. I mean, and that's what the Steelers were so pissed off is that reportedly, he's told the team and the organization and players multiple times that he was coming back, and he just doesn't show up. They don't trust the guy. They don't trust what they hear. They haven't heard anything from him personally recently. So hey, you just go with who you have, man. I mean, it's working. And it's working, in my opinion, and Lance, you might disagree. James Conner's success is hurting Le'Veon Bell's free agent plans because what they're doing is they're showing, look, this guy's not Le'Veon Bell, and look what he's doing. Every time we give him over 15 carries, he's basically getting at or close or over 100 yards rushing. He's catching the ball in the backfield. This is a third-round draft pick. So
yeah, I don't know if I agree with that entirely. I think the thing that's hurting Le'Veon Bell more than anything, he's not playing football and he's getting older. I mean, those things I think are more of an impact than that. But I mean, everybody knows what it is about running backs. You can find them. You may not find Le'Veon Bell's, but you can find running backs to get production out of them. A.K. Alvin Kamara, A.K. John Connor.
A.K. It's James Conner.
James Conner. It's John Connor. He's the Terminator, man. He's the Terminator because he's terminating Le'Veon Bell's money. That's why he's the Terminator.
Don't forget
he's
Kareem,
John Connor.
Don't forget Kareem Hunt. Don't forget Kareem Hunt either in that mix. So, all right, let's go another question. This is a really good one for the offense. Whatever happened to the Steelers always going for the two-point conversion? Haven't seen that much this year. What are your thoughts on that? Do you like the aggressive nature of going for two and forcing the opposition to have to really play behind the numbers game and stuff like that? Or do you just think, hey, kick the extra point and let's play another down?
This ain't Oregon. No, hell no. I hate that. You only go for two late in games when you have to. I don't think you chase the two. I don't think you chase the extra point, the extra two. I don't like it. I think that's aggression for just aggression's sake when you don't have to. Get a touchdown, kick a field goal, kick the extra point, man. I don't really like it. I never thought it was smart. So I don't mind that they're not going for the 2. I know from an analytics perspective, it's probably the best thing to do, but those guys would also tell you should never punt. So either believe it or not.
Yeah, the football analytics are very different. The World Series is going on right now, and you see the shifts and the way that they play players, and there's so many analytics. And the NFL is just kind of dipping their toe into those waters. But like you just said, there are those people that say you should never punt. Why? Because the numbers state that it's a 50-50 shot of getting it. But that's just stupid. That's just dumb. You don't do that. I mean, it's not as simple as that. So for me, I'm with you. I don't think that going for 2 is always the best bet. Um, but hey, if you can extend the lead, if you can force the other team to have to follow suit, it's not always a bad thing to do. So there you go. And that's kind of it for the show. No more questions. They've kind of dried up, which is fine. Hey, it was a good session. And we appreciate all those people that watched.
I have a WTF, Jeff.
You have a WTF. Well, then, my friend,
Yes.
go ahead. The soapbox is yours.
Just really quickly, a lot of things have gone on. We're doing this live on Wednesday. A lot of things have gone on, in terms of today, in terms of politics with bombs and all that stuff. Hopefully everybody's safe. Nobody gets hurt, so on and so forth. Hopefully we can continue to have, or we can start to have healthy discourse politically around the country. But I get on my soapbox just to say the reports about Derek Carr crying when he was injured and Raider players allegedly him losing favor in the locker room because he was a grown man crying. That's bad. That's why that's a bad football team. That's why there's a bad football team. People can cry. People can be emotional. It's okay for men to be emotional as well. Uh, the guy thought he was hurt. He cried. He was sad. Maybe that's how he demonstrates his passion and his love for the game. And he's so disappointed that he may not be able to play and help his football team that the natural emotion is him crying. Crying doesn't make you weak. So hopefully you guys out there, if you have sons, if you have kids, teach them to just be emotionally real in the moment. And it's okay to cry. It's okay not to cry. Just encourage them to be emotionally real in whatever it is that is real for them in that particular moment. Of course, not violence or anything like that, but saying a man is weak because he's crying, that's so old. That's so antiquated. I mean, that's so ridiculous. I mean, it's we have emotions as well. And so when I heard that from the Raiders, I was just like, WTF. That's why that's a bad football team. Give that guy a hug, embrace him, and tell him that it's okay. We understand, man. You want to play football, and it's an emotional experience. It's an emotional time. Just embrace his reaction, embrace his emotion, and build that guy up. Don't tear him down for that emotion. So that was my WTF.
Well, to piggyback on that, Ben Roethlisberger was asked about that today, and he said, in the locker room, he's cried tears of joy, he's cried tears of pain, of anger, and there's nothing wrong with that. And if anyone out there is a football fan and wants to read a very interesting book, it's called The Season of Love, and it was based on Gilman High School, which is a private school in the state of Maryland where I live. And at one time they held the longest winning streak in the nation's history for high school games, and it was a private school. It is a Christian-based school. But it was about this coach who leads this dominating football team that just beats the hell out of everyone, is as brutal as it gets, and he preaches love and emotion to his players. It's an absolutely ridiculously mind-opening book. As a coach, as someone that coached at the high school level for over 13 years, as someone that has 5 kids, 4 of them being daughters myself, for someone that is around young people, young adults every single day, it's very important to teach them that you have to be emotionally available. And if you don't tap into those emotions, if you don't recognize those emotions, they're going to turn into something else, or they're going to stay inside and then they're going to be released as something else. And I don't want to get too far out of the conversation of football here, but Lance brought it up. And so that's something that I'm kind of passionate about, is that it's okay to cry. My kids have all seen me shed tears of happiness, tears of sadness, tears of pain. It's part of life. I'm not going to deny that, and I'm going to make sure my kids, I know Lance is going to do the same, know that it's okay. That it's okay. And by the way, I don't think Derek Carr ever did cry. You saw the video. He wasn't crying. That's
Yeah.
just a face that he made. I don't think he ever shed a tear, at least not on the football field,
I mean,
because
and
ultimately
yeah.
it's still a man's it's a man's game and all that stuff. I just think that was kind of a little much
think
for
think
me, but still, yeah.
think about it, Jeff. What I mean, did we as Steeler fans feel anything but the passion that Heinz Ward felt when he was shedding tears after after they lost to the Patriots because they couldn't win a Super Bowl for Jerome Bettis? Don't think that didn't have something to do with Jerome probably coming back. And he was boo-hooing like a baby, just
Mm-hmm.
like a baby. Like all that emotion came out. I know when I watched that, I was pissed. I was like, man, we gotta win a Super Bowl next year. Like, I mean, I was hot. I mean, like, I rarely get hot watching games now from doing podcasts so much and doing shows, but like in that moment, I was hot. I was like, I felt like I was playing. Like I wanted to run through a brick wall, seeing that raw emotion. I was like, nah, man, I can't. I don't want to see my brother in that type of pain. So I'm gonna do whatever I can to try to win. So I think it helps, and it's a good thing. And that's why the Raiders are bad. Commitment to losing.
So there you go. Hey, that was a good WTF segment. We apologize for those that, were listening to that saying, what the hell does that have to do with the Steelers? But you know what? Sometimes
we
sometimes you
we
go off on tangents.
we brought it back to Heinz Ward.
There
See,
you go.
so
Hey, it's full circle, man. It's all full circle. So hey, if you're listening to the show, if you're on a podcast form, we do have a YouTube channel. We'd love for you to subscribe and like our videos and to be a part of our community here. It's a nice little community that seems to watch the shows and are active in our live chats and be a part of that. You just type in BTSC Steelers Radio in your YouTube search, and it'll be the first thing that comes up. If you haven't listened to us on podcasts, we ask you subscribe in one way, shape, or form. That's iTunes, that's Google Play, that's Stitch, that's Art19, that's Spotify. You name it, we're there. You type in BTSC, if you type in Steelers Behind the Steel Curtain, they'll all show up. Subscribe, listen, and spread the love. It's one of those things where if you have someone that's a Steeler fan that like, if you enjoy these podcasts, tell them about it. Tell them to share it. Send them links.
yeah.
Put it on your Facebook page.
Jeff's being nice, man. I'm saying if you watch the podcast on YouTube, you better be subscribed to the podcast as well. So make sure you double up.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't forget that BehindTheSteelCurtain.com should be your one-stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news, commentary, features, you name it, because we have everything that you freaking need. So check it out. And as for us, we will be on Sunday after the game against the Browns for the Steelers post-game show. In the meantime, make sure you check us out tomorrow night, myself, Brian Anthony Davis, and our Steelers preview show. And other than that, we'll see you next Wednesday on another episode of The Standard is a Standard.